Hello and welcome to a Second Thoughts overview of Kostaltyn of Kislev. Now, I went through the initial turns and checked how the faction plays out, and how different or similar it is to its arena's faction. In the end, I'll give you some army compositions that I would try, and you can choose and adapt those to your own playstyle. Like I always mention, this is not intended to be an in-depth guide, although it has elements of it, and you will be certainly grasping a little bit better of the faction in the end. Now let's play with Kostaltyn of Kislev. For the short victory condition, we must have at least 600 supporters, which will imply confederating Kislev, to destroy Clan Molder and the Ecstatic Legions, and to occupy, loot, razor, sack 30 different settlements. Slightly more difficult than the one from Tsarina's, but still probably quite a short to average short campaign victory, I would say. The reward is quite nice. Plus 3 hero capacity, even though you only have 2 heroes. It's great to avoid having to spend too many buildings to have a few scouts and heroes, especially in the mid-game. Now, the long victory condition, of course, achieved the short victory conditions, to occupy, loot, razor, sack 70 different settlements, and to destroy the war host of the apocalypse, so Archaon, the Legion of Chaos, so Daniel, and Festus, located here. So the closest one is, of course, Festus. You should have some assistance from the Empire to destroy it. But yeah, this means that overall you need to destroy 5 factions overall, including, Clan Mold and the Ecstatic Legions. So it's going to be a lengthy, long campaign, for sure. Achieving it, hero recruit rank plus 10. This is excellent to continue to have great heroes in your newer armies. Now, as the cultist of Ursun, he enjoys, or actually lacks, some good relations with the Ice Court, so less diplomatic relations with them. He does have some devotion generated from successful Patriarch hero actions, ward save 20% for embedded Patriarchs. This is excellent. You nearly always want a Patriarch there, so it's really cool. And melee attack for the basic units, as well as leadership. So, in essence, this gives him good buffs for the early game. So while Catherine has a little bit of a rough start, I would say that Kostaltyn has a little bit less just because of that. Just because of those small buffs. They're consistently good. Always good to have melee attack and leadership. And you can always invest in the red line buffs to increase those. So yeah, that's definitely a different take on the initial campaign with Kislev here. Now, in terms of climate, it is rather decent, let's say, but the only issue is how you should go towards the north into an uninhabitable climate. By the way, ignore the uninhabitable climate frozen here in mountain. Those are not the ones. These are just the examples that I could pick up. But the effects are the same, so hence why. It's still better than generalized order factions. You have access to better climate. So if you wish to play with an order aligned faction and to dominate the whole map, Kislev is still a good idea to go for. Of course, there's better factions to dominate the whole map, but yeah, not without some. Kislev has some slowness on the Chaos Wastes, but yeah, still a better one than some of the other order factions. Your starting province is Erengrad, and while you have a temporary border without issues with the Empire, things can change easily, especially because of Festus or even Draika to the south. Still, for the time being, enjoy the safer southern border, and you can counter to the north, eradicating both Skaven and the Warriors of Chaos initially. So yeah, that should be a good plan. At least you're not fully surrounded as Tsarina, and you can take advantage of that. Now, typical expansion, of course, should concentrate on the Kislev area. Move over to Prague to have a good place a good defensive position here, if you wish. And then, as soon as you can, try confederating Kislev to, dominate this whole area. And then who knows where you'll be going. You may have to go south, just to get some more places. So take advantage of any destruction that happens in the Empire lands. By all means, they'll become yours. Now, you do have a one settlement province with special buildings, of course, which will require careful planning and adaptation to the current playthrough. Diplomatically speaking, you're part of the Order Tide. Definitely you should embrace friendships and alliances with the Empire, with Bretonnia, with the Dwarves, maybe the High Elves if you can, and far away Cathay, of course. Kislev is actually a main foe and possibly aggressor earlier on, so be wary of it. Be wary that Tsarina might just go out for you because you have such bad relations with them, of course. Now, adding to this inner fighting, of course, you do have to deal with the Warriors of Chaos here. You do have to deal with Clan Mulder over there, so the Skaven, and Norska will be on your doorstep pretty much in no time. So, yeah, outposts still should be very clear. You should get any artillery that you can from the Empire. You should get any infantry, solid infantry and artillery from the Dwarves, or any flying units from Bretonnia. Those will definitely make great enhancements for your already strong roster of units. As for the mechanics, they have Devotion, a unique currency that allows invocations. These act very similar to rights. For instance, you have this one that provides supporters when gaining a character rank, growth, casual replenishment rate. You can also gain supporters when occupying a settlement. It can cause attrition to enemy armies within your territory. This is great, especially defensively. And the army ability slows down enemies, by the way. You can also have a basic income one based and supporters generated when constructing buildings. Pretty cool. More when you're, consolidating your gains. That's when I would use this one. And you also have one when fighting a battle. You can gain supporters. The army ability is to summon a bear, so yeah, pretty cool. And the melee attack to all armies. So use them wisely, and these are really important in the early game, so yeah, I will definitely try to abuse these ones as much as possible. The more supporters that you gain, the better relations you have with Kislev, although it nearly needs to counter that you'll need so much. It's basically not necessary for the Orthodox. It's more so that you try to avoid them to becoming an enemy. Now, of course you will still get the control, the leadership, the speed, which is always great, and in the end you can confederate your political opponent, so that's pretty cool. It's also to ensure that when you hit the mark you suddenly have a lot of land, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, the Ice Court mechanic, it allows you to basically set up to ensure that you get better casted heroes and lords that suit your needs. So yeah, once you can unlock these ones with technology, I'll show you later on, you can recruit the Frost Maiden heroes of the Ice Witch lords, and of course you can customize them, which is excellent. That's excellent for varied and focused play. In terms of the Ottomans have a sort of, they have a sort of governor idea. Your provinces are always getting great results, some more income, some more growth, as you can see here with this Ottoman. Of course, you have different ones. You can have one for every 2 provinces, which is great as well. And of course, you can always use them in armies later on if you need. Now, finally, a sort of mechanic on its own is how the 3 cities of Kislev and Prague nearby here, and of course Erengrad, how they work. They act as the main locations for your military buildings, so they're excellent and almost a necessity to control to ensure good domination to the mid to late game. And they, of course, all of them have plenty of special buildings in all, so it may prove wise to try and dominate it as quickly as possible. For our province edicts, we have a control and decreased enemy movement range. Don't neglect this one. Sometimes it's really useful, especially when you're under attack by so many factions. Recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity, again, +2. Note this, it's really cool. You have a lesser chance of plague spreading, hero recruit rank, corruption, hero recruitment cost. This is excellent once you will recruit some heroes. Just pop this one up to enjoy that less cost cost and more ranks, of course. And you have basic income from all the buildings. Nothing too shabby here. Notice that you lack growth and research, which would be rather useful for Kislev, but yeah, you do lack them. In terms of army stances, pretty straightforward. You have the Winds of Magic with the penalty of movement range 10%. You have raiding 50%, of course. You have the ambush and 25% cost, and then you have the encamp with campaign movement range penalty 50%. And this is a basic and a standard that you will need to use while conquering the north, because of course you will have issues with attrition. You'll need to replenish. You need access to the global recruitment pool. Yeah, all of that. Typical ones, nothing to see too shabby. I would like them to have, you know, some additional devotion or something like that, but well, we can't have everything. Now, Erengrad has 5 specific buildings, including the harbor. Not all of them, they're more centered into income stuff. But you won't need them all at the same time. For instance, this one with immune to storm and reef attrition, it's good, but it's not like you're going to need this immediately, you know? So pay attention to when you should build these special buildings or not. Militarily, you require 6 buildings, with 4 having to be actually built in the capital. Now, this implies that your capital is for a long time your main unit producing location. So your income-focused buildings may have to wait for a while. In terms of infrastructure, you have major cities are different than minor ones. So major have a growth and less recruitment cost. You also have a growth and construction cost. So you have 2 for growth, which is excellent, but still it may prove difficult to benefit from all those. More on that later. You have an income, a crazy income building one. You also have devotion and supporters and control and unlocking a patriarch and corruption, you know, typical jack of all trades, really cool. In terms of the minor ones, let me show you, it changes a little bit. So you have a income, growth and recruitment cost. Then you have a devotion, casualty replenishment rate, ambush success chains, corruption, income from farms, basically really awesome building. But do note, these are costly for Kostaltyn, if not mistaken. You also have a control and growth building. You also have a jack of all trades, so devotion, supporters, control, unlock patriarch, etc. And a basic income building. Overall, it seems like we have nearly one for everything, but the key problem here, you cannot build everything, and you will have to choose really well early on. So that's why even you have a lot of options for growth, you may not be able to do that when you actually need it in the beginning. So they have the potential to grow really fast, but what about the army? What about the income? You're gonna have to plan out this really well. Be mindful of it. Research, just a note, it's rather average. Has lots of stuff actually, but you need to have control of the 3 main places to be able to have access to this second sort of line. So yeah, be wary of that. You'll need to control that, and of course there's some benefits here for units, but they're not that significant, I would say. It's a bare minimum, I would say. The bare minimum. But yeah, some units receive very little in the research tree. I would love them to have a little bit more, but that's how it is. You also need these ice sculpting and ice court indoctrination in order to unlock training slots for Frost Maiden heroes and Frost Maidens, for Ice Witch lords as well. In terms of lords, so you have your lord-specific skills, of course, your yellow line, some of the magic, in this case it's the special abilities from Kostaltyn, of course, and then you have the red line, or army, or campaign, or blue line, basically. Now, Kostaltyn has nice buffs for himself and for his army. Some devotion-based, some hero-based, as you can see there. And definitely just some recruitment cost here, some local recruitment capacity. So he's good early game, that's how I would say. You can also have this one for more orthodoxy buildings and income from all buildings faction-wide, which is cool. It's cool. Now, his whole army actually will benefit as well from frenzy, so that's excellent. Now, blue line has both upkeep and replenishment rate here, And of course, that's cool in the final part, but be mindful that Kostaltyn already has buffs for replenishment, and he can definitely reinforce better than Catherine, which may prove important to capture the north. Now, red line is one of the best. Plenty of interesting combinations that you may have. It's very efficient without costing too much. It actually allows, for instance, you can actually try to have just the initial units buffed up, and then you can move on to other units like Tsar God or Ice Gods if you wish, without it costing too much. So that's something I really like. You can devote some skills here and in other areas pretty well. Now, both the Patriarch and the Frost Maidens have actually specific skills that are useful in battle, so they're very useful in the army. Patriarchs will provide replenishment and healing, so I consider them a must in any army, really. Now, the tier 2 and the 3 units are quite good. They're still quite useful throughout the game, especially for Kostaltyn. So, for instance, even Streltsy are really good in the end game. Zagad and even the sleds, even if they are light sleds, you know. So, for sure, you can do a lot with these units. So, yeah, don't neglect them. They may be very good for you, even with carrying you out into the late game. So here are the red line skills for the Kislev armies. A good note is that there are great combinations of armor-piercing, missiles and anti-large, even in just a few skill points, which helps a lot. And now Kostaltyn does not give too much for a specific army, but it does have a frenzy for the entire Lord's army. So, you know, just some good old melee attack and leadership for the early game, which means that the early game will probably be much easier for Kostaltyn than it is for Tsarina, of course. Now, that's why I'm giving them some ideas here. The first build focuses, of course, on the war bears and single entities, while the second one on the sleds and some of the artillery, of course, and overall the range here. Now, the third one is probably what I would try to get to aim to get in the early game, so that's why I included it here. Yeah, it's pretty basic but still powerful considering the buffs that you can get from Kostaltyn. You have to imagine these units with frenzy and of course with the melee attack and leadership buffs there, and also if you wish with the red line skills that you gain here. So you can imagine how powerful those units can be still in the early game. Now, moving to basic compositions, two alternatives that you can get is always with the bears or the artillery units. You can try to sum those up if you wish into a more let's move out really fast and engage them really fast. This may be really useful, especially against anti-large units. So yeah, definitely you can see that how good they are in terms of the red line skills necessities. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Now, finally, I do have some generalized builds, perhaps for the early game. As soon as you hit tier 3, you can try to use these ones, of course. Forget about the Griffin Riders here or the Bears. This is just the transition period. So you can definitely use these ones in the late game as well. But still, for the most part, try to perceive these ones as more of an early game build that you can then adapt to get them into the late game. That's the sort of idea. Notice once more how effective they are. This is about the most expensive one in terms of redline skills allocation that I would have, just because I wanted both cavalry style units. So yeah, that's the idea there. Overall, you're nearly in the same location as Tsarina, but it's already quite different. First, you have more income possibilities because of your port, because of Erengrad. Second, you are near the sea, so the goodies here may prove useful for your early game. And the third, you have different enemies of sort and a slightly more secure southern border. In addition to this, Kostaltyn has overall better units for the early game, so that helps tremendously with these buffs. Everything overall with Kislev synergizes so well that the biggest issue is how planned out everything needs to be. Still, the feeling of a plan coming together is always good. You know, don't neglect the motherland. Don't neglect gaining devotion. Don't neglect growing up a little bit and then maybe destroying it for the building for income. Don't neglect the atamans. You know, make sure that you always get the escort as soon as possible so that you can get some crazy good caster units. You also shouldn't neglect your technology. Make sure that you buff up the early game. For instance, try to get the hooked X blades as quickly as possible, or maybe a Frost Maiden hero first. There's a lot of possibilities. Just make sure that you planned it out, that you do it because of a reason. That's my take with any Kislev playthrough. Now, in terms of army, you do have good hybrid infantry, great cavalry, great single entities, good chariots. It does lack flying units, and it has specific laws of magic that you need to learn, of course. Now, replenishment value is great, actually. But the main issue is the climate and the fact that you'll probably most likely have to go to the north, which is uninhabitable. That's an issue. Still, now I believe it is the time for you to devote to Ursun under Kostaltyn ruling you.